Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our new section of our deep dive series. Today's video will be starting our journey with Fallout 3. In this series, we spend time diving into unique locations, characters, factions, and more in the Fallout series. Now, before we get started, if you're new here, be sure to consider subscribing for more Fallout content in the future, and if you're returning, welcome back and thank you for your continued support. If you've not done so already, be sure to check out our other deep dive videos on Fallout 4 and keep an eye out for more Fallout 3 deep dive videos in the near future. We recently broke 101 users in our Discord server, so I figured we could kick off our Fallout 3 series with looking at the iconic Vault 101. Fallout 3 holds a very special place in my heart as it was the introduction to the Fallout series for me back in 2009. I was in my senior year of high school and found an Xbox Platinum Hits copy in a bin at Walmart for $5 and thought, this game looks interesting, so I'll give it a try. After emerging from the confines of Vault 101 and seeing the post-Great War world of Washington, D.C., I took on a whole new view of gaming. So without further delay, let's get into some Fallout 3. Covering Vault 101 is something that I have been very excited about. Now, while at the surface level it appears to be a simple vault considering it's one of Vault-Tec's rare control vaults, Vault 101 actually has a rich history in the Capital Wasteland and sets the tone and the atmosphere for the Bethesda installments of the franchise. Being dark and grim, the tone of dialogue and expectation of your character as you're growing is very robotic. Receive your Pip-Boy at age 10. Go to class and take the goat to determine a career path for your protagonist. And while it's learned Vault 101 is a control vault, we're born in the vault, we live in the vault, we die in the vault, is quite the dark motto to exist by. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Today, we're going to be diving into the history, the purpose, and the events of Fallout 3's Vault 101.
This place will feel just like home. Come on over here, son. Come on.
When the player's journey begins in Fallout 3, we're immediately introduced to Vault 101 as a young child of approximately a year old. Some of our first memories is escaping our playpen to play with our special book. As we're finishing reading the book, Dad will walk back into the room and catch us escaping, and shows us our mother's favorite Bible verse.
Come on over here. I want to show you something. See that? It was your mother's favorite passage. It's from the Bible. Revelation 21:6. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. She always loved that. All right, come on. Let's go see if your little friend Amada wants to play.
I think that it's important to note James states that this is our mother's favorite passage, and I imagine that's due to their time working on Project Purity before James came to Vault 101 following the death of our mother, Catherine. But we'll get into that later. Once we complete this sequence, time will progress and it will be our 10th birthday party. And it's during this sequence several things occur, but I think it's important to note that this is when we're introduced to the Overseer and receive our Pip-Boy 3000. I think it's also important to note that in Vault 101, it's on children's 10th birthday is whenever they receive their Pip-Boys.
Proud of you. If only your
Congratulations, young man. I don't have to tell you how special this day is, do I? Down here in Vault 101, when you turn 10, well, you're ready to take on your first official Vault responsibilities. So here you are. As Overseer, I hereby present to you your very own Pip-Boy 3000. Get used to it. You'll be getting your first work assignment tomorrow.
It's during this sequence that we're also introduced to Amada, Butch Deloria, Paul Hannon, Walt Mack, Miss Palmer, Officer Gomez, Stanley, and as we're leaving to meet Jonas, we bump into Beatrice, who gives us a poem for our birthday. I think it's important to note that when interacting with Amada, she'll give us a copy of the Grognak the Barbarian, issue number 14, which we know impacts our melee ability. Miss Palmer will give us a sweet roll, and Stanley will provide us with a kid's baseball cap, all of which are useful items to start the game off with. Another little detail worth mentioning is that when we're interacting with Miss Palmer, she specifically notes remembering when Dad came to the vault. Now, to the new player, the way that Miss Palmer said it, it may come across as if she remembers him being born, since she is significantly older. But as we later learn, it's her remembering him arriving at the vault.
Nice Pip Boy. Are you having a nice party? 10 years old. My. Seems like only yesterday that your daddy came. Goodness, listen to me ramble. You're waiting for your present, aren't you?
Following our birthday interactions, Dad will inform us that Jonas is waiting for me and I should make my way down to him and the reactor level for a surprise that they both have for me. Once we arrive, our birthday is acknowledged by Jonas, and we're then presented with our final gift of the day, our very own BB gun.
Are you ready for your surprise? The Overseer gave you your Pip-Boy, and you're old enough to do some work, so I figure you're old enough for this. Your own BB gun. It's a little old, but it should work perfectly. Jonas found it down here. It was in pretty rough shape. Took us a good 3 months to find the parts to get it working again. You know how tough it is to find a spring that small? Good thing Butch misplaced that switchblade of his. So, what do you think? Want to give it a try?
Now, I want to note, I think that this whole entire interaction is a very unique way of shoehorning in a tutorial of using a gun into the setting of the vault without completely breaking the illusion of how locked down Vault 101 is. The last sequence from the opening that we'll touch on right now is the GOAT exam. I think this section is especially interesting as it really sets the tone for adulthood in Vault 101. The GOAT, or the Generalized Occupational Aptitude Test, is a required test for all residents after they turn 16. When playing, it's presented to the Lone Wanderer as a test that will determine which job that they are most suited for once completing their education and entering into the workforce. However, this test is what determines which tag skills the player should focus on based on their answers to each question. It's important to note that these tag skills can be absolutely edited once exiting Vault 101. When the player snaps into focus the morning of the GOAT exam, we're in Dad's office and have the opportunity to lie and state that we're too sick to take the exam. Regardless of which path we choose, Dad will insist that we take the exam as it's important for our future. Important note here, if we take a moment and look at Dad's desk, there's a science bobblehead, and depending on how we handle a later quest, the Lone Wanderer may not be able to return to Vault 101, so it's recommended that we go ahead and retrieve this bobblehead now. Once we make our way down to the classroom, we'll see Amada surrounded by the tunnel snakes, which consist of Butch, Wally Mack, and Paul. If we pass a speech check, we can encourage the tunnel snakes to move on and leave Amada alone.
Daddy's girl.
Stupid tunnel snakes! Immature assholes, if you ask me! Why won't they leave me alone? It's not my fault my father's the Overseer. I don't care about their stupid gang. Can you talk to them? Maybe Butch will listen to you. Please? A bunch of idiots, if you ask me. They think they're so tough with their gang. All they ever do is hang around and cause trouble. They've got it in for me because my father is the Overseer. Like, that's my fault. Thanks. You've always been a good friend. Try talking to Butch. They'll all do whatever he says.
Hey, look. It's Smart Mouth. Afraid I ain't got time for your fancy words right now. So beat it. None of your business, kid. Get out of here before you get hurt. If you mess with the tunnel snakes, you're asking for it. Got me? Maybe you're right. We can deal with her later. Come on, tunnel snakes. This little bitch isn't worth our time.
Following this encounter, we then enter the classroom and interact with Mr. Broch. While I opted to taking the GOAT, if the player insists on skipping this part though, they can lie and state that they're too sick and Mr. Broch will offer to just fill it out for us. This is useful when doing an additional playthrough since we can edit tag skills when leaving the vault. Following the exam and leaving the classroom, time will move forward and will be awoke by Amada claiming that Dad has left Vault 101.
Question 10. Who is indisputably the most important person involved?
Just like many other vaults involved with the Vault Tech experiments, Vault 101 was built sometime during the 2060s decade. Interestingly enough, the overseer from Vault 76 was originally selected to move to Washington, D.C. and lead 101. She declined this position to maintain the ability to remain in Appalachia. Now, this is presumably so she could stay close proximity of her fiancé, Evan, which we learned during our time on Fallout 76 is not exactly how that played out. The intended experiment associated with Vault 101 was to keep the vault door indefinitely closed, not allowing anyone to leave or enter. This was so they could study the role of the Overseer when a vault never opened. If we take the time to read through the Overseer's terminal before we leave Vault 101, we can easily understand the vault has been opened numerous times since the initial sealing of the door. Due to this, the vault has been infested by rad roaches, which in turn has made the vault susceptible to additional infestations as time went on. One of Vault 101's security objectives was to contain these pests, preventing any deaths by rad roach. Because Vault Tech never intended for vault dwellers to ever open the door, the vault did not ever receive a GECK, or the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, which was a device truly only useful to those who would eventually become surface dwellers. When referring to the Wiki, or page 42 of the Fallout 3 official game guide, there's not much info on the first two Overseers, but I believe it's very important to touch on their time as leaders, seeing as they were directly correlate with the events leading up to the events of Fallout 3, and allow the player to make sense of why it's such a big deal that Dad, aka James, was able to leave the vault. When playing Fallout 76, we learned the Overseer from Vault 76 was intended to lead Vault 101, but because she declined it, an unnamed Overseer was assigned to oversee Vault 101, just after the Great War in 2077, and to prevent any survivors from leaving, their Overseer followed instructions left by Vault Tech and created an illusion that the outside world was an uninhabitable, nuclear-ravaged wasteland, which could be argued as true, as we know from the experience of the outside world, but this illusion was accomplished by a series of regular, fake radio transmissions that were recorded before the Great War, which would create the idea that the only hope for survival was to remain within the vault. The original Overseer was able to live out a full life and die of natural causes in 2127. Prior to their death, they prepared a subordinate to continue the vault's experiment. Once the second Overseer took over, they led the dwellers by the same isolationist doctrine, but also convinced senior vault dwellers to become complicit in their vault's experiment. The dwellers were sealed to the properly known Vault 101 mantra: "We are born in the vault, we live in the vault, and we die in the vault." This resulted in a new generation of dwellers' children living by this mantra. Sometime before 2241, an unnamed Overseer strongly favored the idea of the outside contact and assembled a survey team led by Ann Palmer, whom we meet at our 10th birthday party during an opening sequence of Fallout 3. It was during this time that the unnamed Overseer and Ann Palmer worked together to plan a journey and theorize types of mutations they could possibly encounter upon exiting the vault. After finally exiting the vault and visiting the outside world, Ann and the expedition group approached Megaton sometime before February 10th of 2241. This information could be verified to the player when navigating the Overseers before using the Overseer's tunnel during the quest Escape. Just know, Ann Palmer, or aka Miss Palmer, coordinated with a prior Overseer to create a survey team to see how bad the surface actually was.
Man, I don't have to tell you how special this day is, do I?
Looking ahead to the current event of the player's life, it's known that Alphonse is the current Overseer. He became the new Overseer of Vault 101 sometime before 2258, and under his rule, the Vault snapped back into a strict policy of isolationism, which operated with an approach of a police state. Early in his tenure as Overseer, sometime around 2258 to 2259, James, or Dad, and his child, later recognized as the Lone Wanderer to the player, approached the vault seeking shelter. James proposed to become Vault 101's new physician in return for entry into the vault. This request was approved at the agreement that this would be kept from his child, and the Lone Wanderer must be under the impression they were born in the vault. If you have played Fallout 3, then it's obvious that we encounter several members of the Wasteland that challenges this idea. To further reinforce the idea that dwellers have been entering and exiting the vault, we can enter Megaton later on, and the Lone Wanderer can go into Craterside Supply and review the available items for purchase. Here we can answer some interview questions the store owner, Maura Brown, has about life inside of Vault 101, and in return, she'll gift us an armor set.
Research. Say, I'm working on a book about the Wasteland. It'd be great to have the foreword by a vault dweller. Help me out, would you?
I'm pretty sure I remember a girl coming into town with that about 10, 12 years ago. She didn't know a thing about the wastes, and I knew she'd get herself hurt without some sort of protection. So I offered to armor her vault suit. Never saw her again. Probably died out there, poor thing. In a way, she gave me the idea to write this book. It's yours, if you help. Great! Just tell me what it's like to live underground all your life, or to come outside for the first time, or whatever strikes your fancy. Well, it takes a little more work than that to get food, and good water's even harder. But you'll figure that out soon enough. Here, take the armored suit. It won't help feed you, but it should keep you from being food for anything else, or anyone else. Come on, you've got to wake up.
On August 17, 2277, the Lone Wanderer was awoken abruptly by their lifelong friend, Amada, claiming that our dad, aka James, has left the vault and chaos has ensued. In the future, I plan on covering James and his history in far more detail, but it's important to note that he discovered details on the Gek technology, and Dr. Braun and knew his tech was nothing short of a miracle for the improvement of life and the capital wasteland alike. It was on this day that James seen an opportunity to leave the vault during a radroach infestation. Amongst the chaos between the vault security and invasion of radroaches, Agnes Taylor passed away from a heart attack, Floyd Lewis and Vicky Hannon were killed by Paul Hannon, and a member of the Tunnel Snakes were critically injured. Once it was realized that James had fled the vault, staff immediately captured and questioned Jonas of his departure and is ultimately beat to death by Stevie Mack in an attempt to gain as much information as possible. When the Lone Wanderer is making their way through the vault in an attempt to follow in their dad's footsteps, the player will discover their lifelong bully, Butch, is terrified of radroaches and seeks our assistance in helping his mother. Once we teach Butch the definition of irony and assist his mother, the player can be rewarded with a Tunnel Snake jacket, which is a great addition for melee builds. Shortly after, we will have the opportunity to aid Amada while she is being interrogated by her own father and security about why she spoke with the Lone Wanderer. If we choose to interrupt and kill the Overseer and security to assist Amada, it will greatly affect the outcome of a future quest titled Troubled on the Home Front. Thus, I chose to continue on past. When discovering the body of Jonas, the player will discover an audio holotape with more details as to James's departure.
Hold on, Jonas. I need to record this first. I don't really know how to tell you this. I hope you'll understand, but I know you might be angry. I thought about it for a long time, but in the end, I decided it was best for you not to know. So many things could have gone wrong, and there's really no telling how the Overseer will react when he finds out. It's best if he can blame everything on me. Obviously, you already know that I'm gone. It was something I needed to do. You're an adult now. You're ready to be on your own. Maybe someday things will change and we can see each other again. I can't tell you why I left or where I'm going. I don't want you to follow me. God knows life in the vault isn't perfect, but at least you'll be safe. Just knowing that will be enough to keep me going.
Don't mean to rush you, Doc, but I'd feel better if we got this over with.
Okay, go ahead. Goodbye. I love you.
While our direct interaction with Jonas is very limited to the opening sequences of Fallout 3, this audio log further guides us to realizing how impactful his friendship with James really is. If we spend time researching the Overseer's quarters, we'll eventually find the terminal password, if we didn't retrieve it from Amada, and we're able to access the terminal to not only open the escape tunnel, but also delve into more history involving Vault 101. It is in this terminal the Lone Wanderer uncovers the previous openings of Vault 101 for survey expeditions and confirmation of Mrs. Palmer's involvement, as well as images of some of the surface life outside of the vault.
Come on over here, son. Come on. Walk to Daddy.
During our time playing through the opening sequence of Fallout 3, the player gets a pretty good insight to Vault life before chaos ensued. Initial impressions of Vault 101 is one of homely and welcoming. Throughout Vault 101, each living quarter is furnished and has a feeling of comfort, at least as much as it can be for living in a vault. There's a presence of community amongst the members of Vault 101. When looking through the corkboard during our 10th birthday party, you can see that the vault is very lively with activities for different groups within 101. We'll notice announcements such as the Cake Bake-Off, baseball game in the atrium, Wednesday night bingo, and even a tarot card reading by the Vault's very own Beatrice Armstrong, who we meet when she gives us a poem as a birthday gift. As a matter of fact, the only time the illusion of community is really shattered is during our escape after James leaves the vault. This is exhibited a few times and not exclusively expressed towards us, but other vault dwellers as well. For example, once we bypass Butch and his mother and make our way to the vault atrium, we'll encounter Tom and Mary Holden, who make the decision to run down the hallway to unfortunately be met by security, which kills them. Shortly after this, when the Lone Wanderer makes their way to the top floor, they'll encounter Alan Mack banging on a window and talking down to the Wanderer. While Alan is blaming James during this encounter and the Holdens being killed, I think it's a reflection of how fragile society is within the walls of 101 in the events of Rad Roaches and the opening of the vault by James.
I didn't think I would make it. My father, Officer Mack,
While Vault 101 can appear to be a paradise in a world of destruction and chaos, I think it's easy to argue that this is an illusion presenting to the vault dwellers to create a sense of safety and security. While it's known the Lone Wanderer will return to Vault 101 to assist Amada in answering her radio call for help, I won't be spending time diving into this today, as this questline involving 101 ties into a later questline with the Enclave. When making this video and further researching 101, I grew a huge appreciation for my love of Fallout 3. Love or hate Bethesda's team of writers, I think they did an incredible job at establishing an environmental feeling of community and fragility under pressure of the outside world. If this game was your first installment into the series, like it was for me, then you'll understand when I say that this vault was creepy. One of community and appearance of trust and friendship, but built on classic vault tech experimentation, deception, and corruption. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like the video and consider subscribing if you're new here. I would also like to thank each of our patrons for their continued support here on the channel, and if you'd like to consider becoming one, then visit the link down in the description below. If you want to join me on stream and chat about Fallout or other Bethesda games, come on over to Twitch and connect with me and other community members, and the links are down in the description below as well. But with that said though, we're going to be wrapping up, and we'll see you on the next episode of our Fallout 3 Deep Dive series.